talk luxury cars, and there's one name that refuses to go away: Jaguar. There might be a handful of German cars that are better built, but there's none with the same sort of elegant Englishness as a Jag. Coventry's finest really is a class act.
And you won't need friends at Fort Knox either. So if you have a motoring soul and you fancy something rather special, don't go away, because I'm going to tell you how to buy one of the finest luxury cars in the world for the price of a second-hand Escort.
Launched in 1986 wearing D-plates, the XJ6, or XJ40 as some call it, was a quantum leap for Jaguar. Powered by all new 2.9, 3.2, 3.6 or 4-litre engines, it was leagues better than the outgoing Series 3 model. And so, for that matter, were the dealers.
Jaguar boss at the time, John Egan, set about some serious banging together of heads to improve reliability, and it worked. Because today, Jaguars are seen as industrious, obedient and uncomplaining. Oh dear.
Excuse me, sir. I think we might be able to help you with your inquiries. We have no tremendous problems with these cars at all. They're serviced and maintained at the factory. That's an agreement that we've had ever since we've been buying Jaguars, and we find that the downtime is minimal. The current sale of Jaguars means that on purchase you get a 3-year unlimited mileage warranty. Now for us that's wonderful, because the miles that we can do, we probably do as many miles in a month as one of your average motorists will do in a year. So to have a 3-year unlimited mileage warranty for us is good news, and financially it's even better news.
And talking of finance, I mean, you'll sell these cars with holes in the roof and 120,000 miles on. What sort of return do you get?
The return is pretty good for the car. As you say, it hasn't got much in the way of holes in the roof, and once the tape is stripped off the side, the car is in very good condition. The interior, as you see now, is exactly the same as what we would call the civilian spec. I think it does everything that we want from it, and as a driver, it's a driver's car. Once you sit in the seat and get used to it, you couldn't ask for anything better.
Now, I know you're busting to find out exactly how much these old cruisers cost. Well, here's the bottom line. 5 grand buys a good one, 10 a minter, and 20 grand an absolute stonker. But if, like me, you've got a nose for a bargain, you can find them for even less. And to prove it, here's one we've pulled out of the small ads.
Let me introduce you to your next Jaguar. Now, this one is physically for sale today. It's a 2.9, 87D, 80,000 miles, full service history, automatic, sunroof. How much? 6 grand? 5 grand? 4 grand? Give the man 37.50 and this car could be sitting in your garage. No dents, no scratches, no signs of all those miles. Stick a cherished plate on the front and everybody will think you're the chairman of British Gas. Now, when you're inspecting one of these old dowagers, it's ever so easy to get taken in by all this lovely walnut and leather and all these appurtenances of gracious living. I have one word of advice: don't. Instead, concentrate on this single document. This is a Jaguar service history booklet, and it's very, very important. This can add up to £1 grand to the value of the car. This one is great because it's got its first service at 1,300 miles, hasn't missed a single one all the way through. Last service 75,000 miles, now reading 80,000 miles. So this should be your map of the world. Don't buy without one. But I have to say, at 3 and 3 parts, this is a seriously cheap old tool.
But there is a downside. A bad XJ6 will consume £50 notes like Smarties. A good one still won't be cheap to run. Jaguar dealers are charming people who will cater to your big cat's every need, but at a price.
You'll need 2 services a year, 300 quid a hit. Tyres are £100 a corner. Set of shockers, 150. Front suspension overhaul, 200 quid. Now, those might sound like big numbers, but you've got to remember, you'll never run a car the size of a Jaguar on halfpennies. But if you look after it, and Jaguar dealers do it best, there's no reason why it shouldn't go around the world several times over.
I bought it on the 1st of August 1988. I've had it now for nearly 7 years. I suppose I'm really the only one apart from my daughter who's driven the car. It's been a really lovely car. I've done just over 225,000 miles in it, and it's never let me down.
So what sort of problems have you had over those huge miles?
I've never had anything especially wrong. I've never really ever looked under the bonnet between services. I never checked the oil or anything. I've got the warning light, obviously, but it just never comes up.
So you're talking what, original engine?
It's original engine. It's the original car, in fact. It's just a beautiful example of British workmanship for a change.
And would you buy another?
I certainly will.
So what do you look for? Well, first a couple of Jaguar buying points. Always go for the biggest engine, because that sells best. Never get a manual, always have an automatic, and make sure it's got leather trim, not tweed. Remember, people buy cars for two reasons: to drive and to sell later on. So if you end up with something with a tiny gutless engine, a manual gearbox, and poverty upholstery, then selling it later will be as easy as playing tiddlywinks in a rugby scrum. Mechanically, they're pretty fit. Engine and gearboxes last the course, but rear axles, on the other hand, do not. On the early cars, there was a failure rate of as much as 40%, so when you're test driving the thing, it's very important to sit in the back seat, legs astride the transmission tunnel, and listen for rumbles. Same thing applies to the ride quality. If it feels and sounds like a tin tray full of crockery, you're going to need some of these. A set of shockers, which clap out every 50,000 miles.
When you actually get to your bottom in an XJ6, watch the oil pressure gauge like a hawk. It should be minimum 30 psi when the engine is idling and 70 psi when you're at about 4,000 RPM with the engine hot. Also, look in your rearview mirror as you're test driving. Boot the throttle, and if you can see a light haze of blue smoke from the exhausts, you've got engine problems. Listen, too, for the timing chain. If it chatters like a set of castanets, you're looking at maybe 500 quid for a change. But most of all, with these XJ6s, check all the twiddly bits. Make sure all your windows work, your central locking, your air conditioning, even your heater. Things like the headlamp dim switch. If that doesn't work, it's not a question of buying a new one for 20 quid. A new dim-dip module is as much as 200 quid fitted, so check them all. But the really great thing about the XJ6, which separates it from probably any other second-hand car, is that the digital odometer, my friends in the underworld tell me, is impossible to clock. So you can buy one of these, a high miler, with confidence, because you'll know nobody's been at it. Body-wise, this is probably the best Jaguar yet, but on those early D&E plate cars, make sure you have a good look along the lip of the boot lid. You can get rust bubbles starting there. Same story with the rear wheel arch. Look for incipient rust round here, on the dog leg, along the bottom of the doors and the sills. And while you're walking round the car, make sure you check each door handle in turn, because on the pre-90 cars they can shear off and they ain't cheap. Finally, bumpers. There's nothing wrong with them, they just have a nasty habit of disappearing in the night. They're £2 a set, and the creatures from the planet Dork will come and take them. Your only defence is to weld over the nuts. You have been warned.
The 2.9 isn't that quick, so I'd say go for the 3.6 or the 4-litre. The Sovereign is the top of the range with all the bits and well worth seeking out. The best of the lot were made after 1990, so a G-plate Sovereign like this one is the ideal choice. But whichever you go for, you'll be captivated by that sublime amalgam of silence, class and speed.
I have one final testimonial to the allure of this leaping cat, and that is that a certain tall gentleman with curly hair and cowboy boots actually drives one every day. In fact, Jeremy is on his second XJ6. What more is it to say? I rest my case.